Today, we're going to talk about um, one of the four quadrants of the higher self. And this quadrant that we'll be focusing on today is intelligence. We'll start with the story of Diane. Diane was 18 years old. She had just graduated high school and she had to figure out her life, as many 18-year-olds do. And it's a funny time to be in a position to have to make all of the most important decisions of your life with no life experience. But there Diane was at 18 years old, and she lived in a small town, but there was a nearby university that she could travel to from her home. So her parents said, hey, look, we'll pay for college, but we would advise you just stay home and you can commute from home to college and be able to get your education. This all sounded like a good plan. But you see, Diane was in love, and Diane was in love with Ricky. Now, Ricky had plans of his own. Ricky was 21. Ricky played in a band, and Ricky wanted to take his talents and showcase them to the world. So Ricky's plan was that he was going to move to LA, and he advised Diane to go ahead and move with him. So he said, look, we're going to move off to LA. You know, my car's leaving Thursday. You're either with me or you're going to get left behind. And so Diane had a choice to make. She either stays here in this plan, going to school, living with her parents, or she goes off onto this adventure with Ricky and moves to LA. Now, she calls her friend and she asks for advice. Her friend gave her this advice: Diane, follow your heart. So Diane did exactly that. Her heart told her that she was truly in love with Ricky, and he could be the one that got away if she didn't go with him. So Diane packs up a suitcase and she is in that car with Ricky on Thursday, and they drive off into the sunset, and they drive all the way out to LA. Fast forward a little less than 2 years later, about a year and a half later, Diane has a baby. She's in an apartment alone. Ricky has taken off, and Diane is poor. She can't pay the rent. And so, knowing that she's going to get evicted and end up homeless with a child, Diane, at the lowest point in her life, does what's difficult, gets on the phone, humbles herself, and calls her parents. They send for her, and she flies back home. Diane got the advice that she should follow her heart. But following your heart means following your feelings or your emotions. Is it actually the best advice for life? The reality is we should make our decisions based on intelligence or wisdom. The definition of intelligence is the ability to apply knowledge. Wisdom essentially carries the same basic definition. It's the ability to apply knowledge. It's your ability to take knowledge and use it to solve problems, to give advice, to achieve success. That is intelligence. That is wisdom. But when we think of wisdom as being a virtue. Intelligence is more cold, right? When you think of intelligence, it's just like generic collecting of data in order to be able to apply it in any particular circumstance. When we think of wisdom, we think of this higher quality, the higher self, right? And we think of this superlative quality of wisdom as something to achieve, something to strive toward, right? And it would be good for us to strive toward wisdom, because if we have wisdom, then we can apply knowledge to make the best decisions in our lives. If we have wisdom, then we can help other people to make the best decisions in life. But in order to have wisdom appropriately, we have to avoid false wisdom or pseudo wisdom, such as the superficial advice, follow your heart. You see, the reality is, in order to be wise, we have to use more than just the organ that pumps blood to decide what we should do and where we should go. Now, of course, when people say that, they're not talking about the literal heart. They're saying you're following the feeling, because you have an inner voice that's going to tell you what you should do based on an emotion or based on a vibe you're going to get, right? And it's all a little bit nebulous, but that's not a clear and direct strategy to life. When it comes to being able to make decisions that are going to be sustainable, long lasting, when it comes to making decisions that you can be proud of, that you can look back on and say, I'm so glad I made that choice, then we have to make decisions that go a little bit deeper than just following a feeling. Because just because we feel something doesn't make it right. Your emotions are not there as some mystical force from the universe by which to guide your life and to make complicated decisions. Your emotions don't tell you which university is the best, or how to fill out forms. Your emotions do not tell you how to pick a spouse. Your emotions do not tell you how you should treat your child or how you should treat your neighbor. Your emotions are a communication from the subconscious mind to the conscious self. You see, because all of us are armed with a supercomputer in our brain, what we call the subconscious mind. That supercomputer is running everything for us in terms of the day-to-day functions, so that we ourselves, the conscious self, can focus on actually enjoying life, planning things, having a purpose. Some of the deeper factions of life can be enjoyed by the conscious self, because the subconscious is handling all the day-to-day tasks of running your circulatory system, your digestive system, right? And so we're grateful to have that subconscious mind. Now, when the subconscious senses that something is negative or bad energy, it will send a communication to you in the form of an emotion. And that emotion is there to inform you that there's something to pay attention to. In that way, you would listen to the heart, but you would not follow the heart. What's the difference? You want to think of yourself like a company, and you have different parts to your company, just like you have different parts to the body. And so you have the conscious self, the mind, the cerebral cortex, the logical one. That is you. That would be like the CEO of your company. He is equipped to lead the company because he is able to gather data and make calculations. She is equipped to lead the company because she is able to balance wisdom with compassion, justice with morality. She is able to actually pick things apart and understand the big picture while not ignoring the small details. That is the part of yourself that is most qualified to lead. You, the conscious self. Your heart, or the feelings and emotions that you feel on the inside, are communications through which the subconscious will send signals to get the attention of the conscious self when something seems important to the subconscious mind but hasn't been dealt with. So it will send negative emotions if the subconscious mind recognizes that something is violating what's important to the self. And it will send positive emotions when the subconscious mind recognizes that what's happening is in alignment with the self. So the subconscious mind in your company would be like the assistant to the CEO. Should a CEO listen to an assistant? Yes. That's why a CEO has an assistant. But should the CEO follow the assistant? In that the CEO gives the power of the whole company to the assistant and has the assistant run the company while the CEO sits back and does nothing? No. The job of the CEO is to make the decisions. That is you. When it comes to yourself, you are to make the decisions. You are to lead. You're not actually supposed to follow your heart. You're not supposed to be following anything inside of you. You're supposed to be gathering intel, data, and processing all of the information that is intelligence to apply what you learn to make a decision that is a judgment that is wisdom. Does that make sense? So you're going to listen to the emotion, you're going to listen to the feelings, but it doesn't mean you're always going to follow the feelings or the emotions, because your heart is there as an assistant. It's there to inform you. But that's just one side of the equation. If you actually followed the heart, you could end up like Diane, regretful that you didn't do what was wise. So you are not to follow anything. You are to lead the self. You are the leader. And you listen to your different faculties, what you're gathering in your conscious mind and what's happening in your subconscious mind, all this information to help you to make decisions. Can you picture how you would be able to do this in a way that would lead you to success? You being the CEO, your subconscious mind being the assistant. So think of an example in your life. Think of yourself having a conversation with your spouse, right? So your husband or your wife, if you will, says something to you, and what they say to you violates your whole sense of self. They said something that shows they don't know you at all. They don't understand you. It is so irritating what they said that you feel an emotion inside you that wells up, and it's just telling you, knock their block off. Okay, should you listen to the heart? Right? The heart is telling you, knock their block off, to be violent in this situation. That's where your heart is guiding you right now. So should you follow the heart? Should you actually be listening to the heart? No. No. See, the heart is there, but it's only an assistant. So it's giving you a piece of information, which is warning, warning, the self is being violated. The CEO needs to come online and analyze the situation. You see, if you follow the heart in that situation, you hit your husband in the face or your wife, and you end up spending the night in jail, or you could harm them. You end up feeling regret, and you end up apologizing to the person who hurt you. Following your heart doesn't lead you to the best outcome. But if you use intelligence, wisdom to make your decision, what would that look like? So what would happen in that moment is you're sitting there and your spouse says something and it's violating the self, and you feel that emotion well up, and then you apply wisdom to the situation. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to move my body, because if I move my body, I may be inclined to do something violent. And I need to take in some more information. Now I'm going to count to about 5 to 7 seconds before I let anything come out of my mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm still feeling this emotion right now. Why am I feeling this emotion? Well, because what they said just indicates that they don't know me at all. All right, what are my options right now? Because I'm feeling extremely overwhelmed by this situation. Well, if I open my mouth, I'm bound to say something I regret. And if I move my body, I'm bound to do something I regret. So I can continue to pause here and let more time pass, and maybe this feeling will pass. Or I can get up and remove myself from this situation altogether. So now your wisdom has come up with 2 scenarios which are adaptive to the situation. 2 scenarios which will lead to you not looking back with regret, but looking back with pride in how you handled it. And so you inform your spouse, you know what, I'm going to put a pin in this and we're going to take a break. And I'm going to go think, and I'll come back to this conversation just a little bit. And you get up and you walk away. Or you inform the spouse, you know what, I'm going to need a minute to process what's happening right now. And you stay right there, but you don't say anything. In both cases, you've broken no laws. You've done nothing that you regret. You've used wisdom to handle the situation. Following your heart can really get you in trouble, right? Like in a circumstance, imagine a guy who's out He's having fun with his friends. He meets a really amazing girl. She's so beautiful. She's so exciting, right? And he might be a little bit tipsy, right? And this girl now invites him back and says, "Hey, why don't you come with me back to my hotel or my apartment?" And now the man has just met this woman. And so now the man has to make a decision. Now, if he follows his heart, then he goes back to the hotel or back to the apartment, and he ends up in what people today call a situationship. A situationship is not a relationship, it's more of a situation, but it's where you're entangled with someone almost like you have a relationship with them because now you have a child together that was unexpected, or you end up in some situation where your lives are tangled and you need each other, but you don't want each other. You're in this situationship, right? Or instead of following his heart, he can call online the CEO and be the leader, be the wise self, and take into consideration everything. So his heart is saying, "Oh, please, yes, 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 she's so beautiful. I want to go with her. I want to go with her. Please say yes." But then you have to make the decision as the conscious self and say, "Okay, I understand what you're saying, but let me analyze some data here. First of all, how much do I know about her? Nothing, because I just met her. Okay, so what's the danger of going back? Well, we can end up enmeshed and entangled in some kind of situationship, and that we'll regret it. And that can mess up all of my plans in terms of what I'm doing with my life, my business, my school, my reputation. All types of things can happen. She could be laying a trap. I don't know her. She could later accuse me of something. I don't know her. But what can I do where I consider both the feelings of the heart, but I do what's smart? Right? Because I can just walk away coldly using my intelligence, and that will keep me safe, but then I've ignored the heart altogether. So maybe what I can do, utilizing my intelligence and wisdom, is I can gather the contact information for this person whom I'm having a connection with right now, and I can allow time to pass and for us to continue to explore this connection, but safely from two different houses where I'm calling her on the phone or I'm sending her messages or I'm writing her letters, in which I can actually uncover who she is before I get under the covers with her. And that way I'll be able to make a decision that I don't later regret, but it will be a decision that's based on information and knowledge. That's wisdom. That's being wise. And so you get the phone number and you go home and with your pride and your self-respect. That's making decisions that you can really be proud of. Does this make sense to you? Do you feel like you can apply more intelligence in your life? Do you feel like you could be a more wise person? You know, it's funny because you don't have to be um, extremely book smart to be wise. A wise person is someone who has the ability to take information and just apply it so that it solves a problem or it counsels someone or it achieves success. Like the difference between a man who goes to university and he gets his bachelor's, then he goes to university and gets his master's and he gets his doctorate, and then he's like, okay, but what am I going to do to make money? Versus the man who never went to university at all, but he just took a little bit of knowledge about cars, turns it into a whole mechanic shop. He has employees working under him, and he's been making money for years. And now this mechanic could actually advise this doctorate on some basic situations in life because this mechanic has wisdom, whereas this doctor in this scenario has book smarts. And so there's a difference, right? And so you have the ability to be wise, right? Because if I name certain scenarios in your life or in life in general, you can actually picture what a wise person would do, right? Because does a wise person save their money or does a wise person spend their money on impulses? You already know the answer to that. So you have the ability to be a wise person. Does a wise person get into situationships with lots of different people, or does a wise person carefully choose whom is going to be a respectable partner they can spend their life with and that they can trust? You already know the answer to that. You understand how to be wise. To be wise is to make decisions with good judgment. To be foolish is to do what you knew you shouldn't do. I knew I shouldn't have gone home with her. I knew I shouldn't have uh, yelled at my husband and started cursing at him. I knew I shouldn't do that. So when you go against what you know, then that's foolishness. So you just do the opposite and you have wisdom. It's to go with what you know. It's to apply the knowledge you have. If I make this decision, it will lead to this outcome. So therefore, I choose not to make that decision. I choose to be the leader, not the follower, the leader. A wise person understands that it's not just about looking for right and wrong to make a decision. It's about analyzing what's going to be to your advantage or your benefit in any situation. A wise person understands that he should be the last to speak in a room, because a foolish person rushes to speak, but a wise person waits for the traffic to clear before stepping into the road. It looks smarter to say, I don't know, than to be later proved wrong. That's something a wise person understands. A wise person considers himself to be a fool, whereas a foolish person considers himself to be wise. There's the amount of things that you don't know will always be greater than the amount of things you do know. A wise person understands that. And so a wise person is able to guide their life, not following their heart, not following anything, not following their gut, but taking into consideration what they're intuiting from their gut and what the feelings are from the heart, but ultimately putting together the information that they have, intelligence, gathering data, and choosing what's going to be best for the future. We really have to have a solid grasp on what we don't know. And to understand that, we have to recognize that the amount of things we don't know will always be greater than the amount of things we do know. And the amount of things we can't do will always be greater than the amount of things we can. That illustrates the foolishness of focusing on what you don't know and focusing on what you can't do. We will have low self-esteem and low self-worth if we're focusing on all of the things we can't do, because there will always be things you can't do. That's not wise. You don't look at Michael Jordan and say, I wish he would have improved his baseball game. I wish he would have just gotten better at baseball. No. If anything, you say, I wish I could see him play today the way he used to play so that he could play against other players like LeBron who are active today. We want to see more of the gifts of these individuals. When we use our intelligent mind, we focus on what we have and we build on that. We focus on our gifts and we build on that. We don't put our focus and our main concern on what we don't have, what we can't do. So stop harping on your apparent flaws or what's not there, because you're made up of the positives. You cannot be made up of a negative. That's a mathematical impossibility. There's always going to be a vast array of things you don't have, don't know, don't do, but your focus is on what you do have and building upon the knowledge that's in front of you. Still, we don't want to become overconfident in what we know. I remember when I was probably about 20 years old, I was like 19. I was with a friend of mine and we went to go see a movie. It was called Minority Report. It was starring Tom Cruise. And I really was getting into the story. I was watching this movie, and it was at this part where Tom Cruise, his character was falsely accused of a crime he hadn't even committed yet. He lived in a dystopian future where they were able to predict a crime that you were going to commit. And they had accused him of being potentially guilty of murder. And so the police were actually looking to arrest him for a murder he hadn't committed. And so he's on the run. And I am right in there with him in this part of the movie. I'm just thinking, yes, this is unfair. You're this guy. You're a good guy. You would never commit a murder. And he's like, I would never do this. I'm a good guy. In fact, I'm a police officer too. Like, why would I ever go out and commit this crime? And there they are. They're chasing him, and he finds himself on a plot twist in a hotel room, and he sees these pictures of his long lost son scattered around the hotel room. And he's getting really confused, like, what is this? His son had been kidnapped years ago, and it was an unsolved mystery. But now, as he's in this hotel room, he realizes he is in the room of the would-be kidnapper. And then in walks this ugly guy. And this guy admits to Tom, yes, I kidnapped your son and I killed him. And Tom just starts getting mad, and he realizes, he's like, oh my gosh, I am going to kill this guy. And I, in that moment, am right with him. I'm like, yes, I get it. He thought he would never do something like this. And now he realizes that he would do something that he never thought was possible before, thus illustrating that we cannot be arrogant, thinking we know everything, because we don't even know what we would do until we're actually in a situation. And so a wise person is modest. They recognize their limitations. They recognize what they don't know. And they don't make grandiose claims and boasts, because they recognize, I don't even know what I would do in certain situations. And I just found that so profound. In the end, he didn't kill the guy, just so you know. But you have to watch the movie if you want all the details. But ultimately, hopefully from this discussion, you can see very logically how you can lead your life utilizing intelligence rather than following your gut or following your heart. And when you are in your wise mind, your monk mind, then you are not in your monkey brain or your animal brain. And by being such, it elevates you above the animals. And that's why wisdom or intelligence is one of the cardinal attributes of the higher self. Things turned out okay, by the way, in the end for Diane. She moved back home. She got back into school. And she ended up getting a really good job. But later in life, she was faced with a situation where she was falsely accused at her job, and then she was disciplined, and it really wasn't her fault. And she really felt like this was so unjust that she wanted to quit her job. But she remembered a lesson that she had learned earlier in life. Don't follow your heart. She realized when she looked at it that, logically speaking, in her case, quitting her job wasn't the best strategic move for her. If she just would grin and bear it, which had been otherwise a good job, things could really turn out well. And so even though her heart wanted her to quit the job, she decided to stay and to do what was intelligent, even though it was hard. Today, she's glad she was the CEO of herself, because now she's the CFO of that company. Yes, she's actually running it from one of the highest positions, all as a result of making sure she followed her wise mind, her intelligence, or rather was actually the leader. So you make sure, please, to be the leader of the self and don't follow anything.